Shakmat were very kind and sent me the new version of the Bishop's Miscellany, which is a fairly unusual name for a module, but very much in keeping with their theme. This is the Mk2, and it adds a few new features over the original, most notable of which is the screen here, the SD card, and a few other things internally. But what is Bishop's Miscellany? Well, it is a CV gate recorder, manipulator, and generator. So you have two channels, channel 1 and channel 2, which you can record CV sequences into, whether from another sequencer, from, say, a just moving an attenuator like this, or a sequencer like the Oxi One here. You can manipulate them, slice them, repitch them, do all sorts of crazy things with them. You can also generate new sequences using this generator section here, which we'll look at in a moment. And then once you've generated those sequences, you can use the processor here to manipulate and change them, varying the gate length, adding in slides, and you can record all this. So let's do a quick dive into how the module works. And the basic idea here is that you've got a menu that you can navigate through by either tapping different buttons, you press the nav button, or press and hold this controller knob here to move through the different screens. On the main screen, we can set the length of the sequence from 1 to 64 steps, the clock division, the key it's in, the pitch offset, and it's also got a quantizer, so we could do different scales, octaves, fifths, triad major, triad minor, and so forth. But the real power comes in these last two settings here. One, the first one, corresponds to the generator that's being used to create the notes. In this case, it's random mode 1. And the second one, the P, corresponds to the processor that's being used to manipulate the triggers and notes being generated. In this case, it's adding a slide. You can either get to each of these main menus by turning the knob here and pressing the nav button, or a quick shortcut is press nav and the regen button to go to the gen menu, the generator menu, or press nav and the process button to go to the process menu. And if you want to go back to the main menu, 2 taps on nav, and there you are. You also have these 2 buttons here. One is for recording any internal generation or processing. So if you're turning knobs and you want to record them, press and hold this, turn the knob, and you will have destructively modified the sequence you have in here. This button is for recording external CV values, whether they're coming from, say, attenuators or from another sequencer, an LFO, whatever, it doesn't matter. It goes in here, it gets recorded, it gets quantized, and then you can manipulate and play it back. We're going to look at all of this in the video. So I've just got a few basic bits of patching set up. I've got the drums patched in over here, and I'm just finishing patching out my clocks and reset signals. So I'll just patch the clock here into C legs. There we go. So I've got clock multed over here on multiplicand and the reset trigger from the Oxi One coming in here because that will reset the sequencer. Now, right now this is sending 24 ppqn out of the Oxi, but I have that divided down here on Palms Pro. So the clock is going to come out of here, and you can see it's coming out as 16ths. Notice over here, there's a little square with a flashing dot on it. That corresponds to each step being triggered. Okay, so let's patch in a oscillator and we will try and do a bit of recording and generating. So we'll take the gate out here from gate 1. We'll patch it into the trigger on the envelope generator and Zadar. We will also take the pitch out, which is from this output here, patch it into the Volproactive here on twin waves, take the output of twin waves into our filter. Then I'll just patch the output of the filter into C legs for a little bit of delay and reverb. I'll turn that off at the start because let's just hear it dry, keep everything nice and simple. So I'll just patch the output 1 here of Griffin's Claws into CV input 1 over here so that we can record an external CV value. And I've also limited the range of this attenuator quite substantially because otherwise we'd get 10 volts, which would be 10 octaves, and that would just be crazy on the output over here. To set up, we just do erase and channel 1. So I'm recording onto channel 1. We've 2 channels, channel 1 and 2. So we've channel 1 selected here. I also need a gate. So I'm just going to patch the output of gate 1 here, which triggers every time the slider moves, which is a really useful feature on Griffin's Claws. I did a video on it. Link is up there. Patch that into gate 1. Now, every time a gate comes in, Bishop's Miscellany will record the CV value. Now, let's hit play. And we see we've got our clock coming in because we've got this happening. To record, we press record external and off we go. Now, first of all, I might want to change the length to be back to, say, 32 steps. There we go there. So we have a sequence programmed in. We can now manipulate it. We have two ways of manipulating it. We can use a regeneration algorithm. So the generator mode does both generating new sequences, which we'll look at in a second, or regenerating existing sequences. So we could go all the way here. We turn the knob, navigate through the different algorithms, and it says regen up the top. And now we can offset and change the range. For example, with this regen algorithm, we could adjust the speed. Let's try that. So we play the sequence. And now if I press and hold a button, I'm speeding up the sequence playback. 100% would play it exactly at the speed I had it. And now we're playing a lot slower, 50% say. So that's one way of manipulating a sequence. Another way is to use the process. So press nav and process. And process allows us to create different processing on top of the sequence itself. So for example, I could add slides between notes. Let's press play. If I hold, or we can change that to be gate or constant. Now say I wanted to record that in, that knob movement, press record internal, process, off we go. Or a vibrato effect. There, I added a recording of the vibrato just at the end. You hear it? So while the sequence itself is fairly unmusical and uninteresting, it shows you how we can take a sequence of notes, in this case just off a very simple attenuator movement, and manipulate it. Now, of course, I can quantize this like this. Semitones, octaves and fifths. Or I could go quantize it to minor triad. It starts getting really weird now. Now, while I'm on the main menu, the regen and process knobs and buttons still work. So let's take a listen. I can add more vibrato while we're here. And I could change the algorithm here on the regen side. And this one would allow me to repitch it. Pre-quantizer. Or we can increase the range of notes by 200%, which creates some really weird sound, because of course we've added slide there. Rather than record random slider movements, let's record a sequence that I have programmed in here on the Oxi One. Now, first of all, let's just take a listen to the sequence. Just a very simple upward no progression. Nothing too crazy going on there. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to patch this into CV1 to record it. We'll patch the trigger here into, and we'll patch the CV output from channel 1 into the Volproactive input. We press record external and play. And then we just go and fix up our length, so because I played 2 bars, so 32 steps. Okay, so now I can do a few fun things with this little sequence I've programmed in. First of all, I can obviously repitch it up and down an octave. Change the key. D minor, the saddest of all keys. We could apply the range regenerator to it. And then record a little bit of that. We could also save this sequence and say we liked it and we want to, we've done some things to it, we've messed around with it a bit and we want to go ahead and save it. Okay, how do we do that? Let's use nav on the knob now and we'll turn to past the edit sequence. We'll get to that in a second. We're just going to go into the memory screen. So here you see the memory screen, which allows us to load and save these patterns. So what we're going to do, we'll pop down here, and now we've got the concept of playlists, which are groups of patterns, which are then stored in a project with all the settings. Right now, we're just going to store the sequence. We're going to save, and we're going to save it, and we're saving channel 1 as sequence 1. We go down to confirm, we confirm that, boom, done. Now we see here that now we are playing on channel 1, we are playing sequence number 1 that we have saved. Let's just take a look at what happens with the generator modes. This allows us to create sequences of different lengths. So for example, let's say I set up a 32-step sequence here, and we will go over here into the generator mode, hit play, and now these knobs control this random algorithm. Now we can record this, of course, as before. So we'll just hit record, hit play. I just turn the knob there to play around with the chance amount. And now we have a sequence recorded in. We can mess around with it, of course. We could requantize it. Say I wanted to pitch this up and down or vary some of these other parameters without having to turn these knobs. Maybe I'm doing something here, but I want them controlled off faders or maybe even an LFO. Let's look at how we can use these 4 inputs here, ACV, A, B, C, and D, to map to different internal parameters. And the wonderful thing about the bishops is everything you're seeing here on the screen, all of the different knobs, all the different modes, are all CV mappable. So you can actually send CV into just about anything and control it. So let's patch in from output 1 here on Griffin's Clause into ACV A, which is the A input. Now we have to set up a mapping. So what I want to do is I want to send in a CV value to add to the sequence, to pitch it up, so that we can offset it and we can repitch it pre-quantizer. So let's press nav and turn the knob here till we come to the ACV screen. And this allows us to set up CV mappings. You see here we have A, B, C, and D. Now to choose which one you're going to change, you just turn the knob, and then to change it, you press. Now there's 2 steps involved. First, you choose the group or family of the CV inputs, and so the compute group contains, for example, the pre or post input offsets to the pitch information. We could change the processing group, which would control the processing algorithm, the regen group over here, or indeed none. So, or playlist or transport. So you have a lot of different options to modulate using external CV. So let's leave it on compute. Press the knob again, and now we can choose the destination. Pre-quantizer for sequence channel 1, pre-quantizer for channel 1 and 2, post-quantizer for channel 1, 2, 1 and 2, or an octave jump. Now let's take a listen to what happens to our sequence when I adjust a CV value coming in here from channel 1. We're able to pitch it up and down. I'll reduce the range lower on Manus. Now, we're not just limited to mapping CV to things like pitch. Let's take a look at how we could map CV inputs B and C here to some of the parameters on these regen algorithms so that we can actually control the regen algorithms using these faders here on Griffin's Clause. So once again, I'm going to go over to my CV mapping page here. And what I'll do is for B, I'm going to choose the family as regen. You see here it says regen on the screen. And then I will choose the destination to be Y1, which corresponds to the Y knob here on channel 1. Channel 1, Y knob. And then for the C input, which is this input over here, I'm going to again choose my regen family, and I will choose X1, which corresponds to the X knob here on channel 1. Now with this mapping set up, I can go ahead and patch the output of Griffin's Claws into the C and B inputs. Press nav to go back to the main menu. Now if we just go here and look at our regen screen, you see now how the parameters change in response to the CV values coming in here. So now we know we have our mapping set up correctly. Okay, which regen algorithm am I going to use? I'm going to use the slicer. Now what the slicer does is it takes a slice of the buffer and it just plays it over and over as a loop, just like the old school samplers used to do. You can define the length of the slice and you can define the position of the slice, or where the slice starts within the buffer. So let's take a listen. We have a sequence program then here coming out of Manus, which we can of course repitch over here. Now, to use the slicer, we have to press the regen button. And we can, and you see now we're just playing a loop. Now say I wanted to hold that slice without having to hold my finger because I want to go off and do something else. The hold button will lock something on. So if I press hold in regen, so off we go. Now we've turned on the slicer, press hold, you'll see here the slicer is locked on. Now I can go. And of course, I can adjust the parameters as we're playing here. Well, you get the general idea, which is that you're able to use these to create fun manipulations, maps to external CV, which could, of course, come from an LFO. Now, I've set something up a little bit different using the second channel this time, and you'll see here I've got twin wave patched in out of the CV2 and gate 2 outputs, and I still have Manus iteratus patched out of CV1 and gate 1, and I'm just mixing them here in this little Nekia opal. It's a little bit buried behind the cables, but it's in there. You can kind of see it in the background. Now, what I've done is I've used on channel 2, I press the channel 2 button, we go to the generator, and I've used the knob mode. Now, what does knob mode do? It's a generator that records knob movements, and it records them when you move the knob and when the knob exceeds a threshold amount that you set here. So you set a threshold, and if the knob position exceeds that threshold, it will record the CV value. But it will not just record it constantly, it will only record it when you move it. So I've programmed in a very basic sequence here on twin waves through Akari. And what I did was I saved it. I saved it here into slot number 1 for sequencer 2. But what I want to do is I want to load the same sequence into channel 1 over here and play it on Manus iteratus, because I want both of these guys playing the same sequence so I can play around with it and manipulate it. So now that I have the sequence defined on channel 2, how do I get it over to channel 1? Well, that's where we go back to this special menu here, this edit sequence menu. Right here in the middle, there's a copy sequence. There's also copy parameters, uncopy sequence, and parameters. These 3 options copy from the current channel to the other one and basically overwrite what's there. So if you say copy sequence, it'll just copy whatever is defined in the sequencer buffer for channel 2 into channel 1, or vice versa if you're on channel 1. This will just copy the parameters for your process and generators, and this will copy both. So let's choose both from channel 2 to channel 1. Boom, done. Now, when I hit play, we're hearing the same sequence on both sides. But what I want to do, first of all, is I'm just going to turn down the twin wave. So we're just listening to the sequence now on channel 1. I'm going to reverse it. So now it's the same sequence on channels 1 and 2. But they're now, one is reversed against the other. Now we can repitch. And I've also mapped CVD input here to be this fader here on Griffin's Close, which allows me to repitch. Now, of course, I can go into my regen here on channel 1. And take a little slice of it there. I think that's enough diving into the Bishop's Miscellany, a very interesting module that deserves a lot more kind of study than you might normally think. There's a lot of depth here that you can get out of it. On the surface, it seems like yet another sequence generator, but it's really good at twisting and manipulating existing sequences or coming up with happy accidents. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed today's video. Please do let me know in the comments what you thought. If you have any questions, do let me know down below. Hit the old subscribe button there to stay up to date with the channel. And once again, thank you for watching.